So I have a couple of questions that I prepared just so having consistent feedback and stuff like that. So, I mean, what attracted you to the course to start with? What?
I guess to some degree, part of my role is coaching. And so, it's kind of, actually, I need to put myself into that space as well. And it's kind of the physician heal yourself kind of thinking. And so based on the conversation that we'd had, I kind of thought, actually, that might be a different angle on personal development.
Yeah.
Might be good for me personally, but also might be good in terms of just building up a greater awareness of kind of like the psychology of humanity, and help me to understand that a little bit better, but maybe to kind of upskill a little bit as well in terms of my own coaching approach, and a bit more awareness perhaps in terms of the interaction with myself and with other people.
Yeah, and something you said there really made me think of a follow-up question, because it obviously the conversation around the course, it's not your traditional coaching kind of approach necessarily. So I'm interested to hear what were your thoughts going in, and then having come out the back end of it, where did you land with kind of that side of it?
So I think my thoughts going into it were more exploratory.
Okay.
Kind of wonder what this is about. It sounds like it might be interesting. I think, excuse me, go on. World's noisiest cat. So I was kind of more exploratory, exploring what is this package that you were offering, and what's the journey going to look like. And I was probably putting myself in a slightly different space as well. So poetry and some of the areas that you look at perhaps aren't my natural go-to place. But I do know that I'm quite visual, and I would say biased creative than biased scientific. So I'm more biased to creative, and so kind of, do you know what? I push myself out the comfort zone a little bit, go and explore this, and see if that gives me a different context from which I may learn something that I might not normally notice. That's kind of where I went, kind of going in. I think what I got from it, what I enjoyed about it, I think actually were the live sessions and the interactions and the conversational approach to it. Allowed some of that verbal, poetic kind of stuff to kind of come out in a more natural way. So I don't know if I'm the only one. I guess I'm probably not the only one that does this, but tend to read things in my head internally. Whereas when we were doing the sessions, you would often read out loud the poems, and then you get more depth and more color to what's there. You read the words in black and white and it's two-dimensional. You read it with voice tone and emphasis and pauses and pace, and it gives the whole thing a different character potentially. So all of that I found really useful, really interesting. So kind of trying to reinforce for me things that I think I already know, which is communication is a multi-dimensional thing, and if we just limit ourselves to one aspect, then we're probably losing perspectives and insights that we could get from some of those other dimensions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, and it's very good feedback to carry forward for when I run these again. So what for you then were I use the word shifts, but really, I mean, were there insights and things that you came across while we're doing the course? You thought, wow, okay, that's interesting. That would be useful going forward. That sort of thing.
Yeah, I think I think for me, one of the big things was the ability to be able to kind of just step back from, don't necessarily allow yourself to be overwhelmed by the thoughts that are racing around, and just kind of coming to the realization that I you know what, I can step back from that and be an observer of what's going on to get perspective on it. It sounds kind of surreal and nice in theory, but people kind of go step back and take perspective. But I think what you did was you provided a metaphor that I've kind of like been able to, do you know what? Yeah, I can use that metaphor to remind myself of the practice.
Right.
And I think I found that really useful. The other things, I think, some of the stuff that we were talking about actually connected to kind of some of my faith beliefs, the spirituality of humanity as much as the physicality and the psychology. So heart, body, and mind, but also spirit. So that kind of connected a little bit with my own kind of faith position with that as well. So yeah, those I think would probably be the main things in terms of my key takeaways.
Yeah. And would you say then, based on those takeaways, what would you say are the direct impact on your lived experience as a result of those things that you encountered as we did the course?
So I think a bit more consciousness would be probably the word I would use. So I know that my natural style is intuitive, and my a lot of my key competencies are probably innate rather than explicit, and so yeah, I think a raised consciousness by the use of reflection and stepping into a different context and gaining some insight because of that. So because what we were doing wasn't what I would normally be doing, it provided a change of context, which provided the opportunity for some new insight, and that part of the just a heightened consciousness of what's actually going on when you're just going through things and you're just dealing with things in the subconscious, and you're dealing with things through habit and normalized behavior and things. Kind of like, and hang on, let's take a sidestep and just think about that for a minute, and let's just take a look at that and see what's really going on. So yeah.
So what value did that deliver to you in kind of your lived experience? Did it address any of kind of things like calmness, confidence, or any of those kind of?
Well, that's really interesting, Frank, because the two words you've used there would probably be the two words that I would have given to you. Yeah. I think prior to the course, I was suffering from some lack of confidence, probably. A whole set of circumstances contributing into that. And that lack of confidence was affecting my sense of equilibrium, calmness, in terms of the approach. And so I was, I wouldn't go as far as to say anxious, but maybe a bit more kind of edgy. And so, yeah, I think the going through that journey, it's kind of caused me just to calm down a little bit, and in calming down, the realization that actually that I have got more competence than I sometimes give myself credit for, And with that competence, there's a little bit more, the realization of the competency kind of helps to fuel the confidence. Not that I necessarily feel that competence and confidence are a binary relationship. I think it's a relationship.
Yeah. I get you there. And that's wonderful to hear, actually. So in terms of how the course was delivered and stuff, is there anything, what worked particularly well for you, and what do you think could be improved?
So I think that, the conversational style within the sessions, I think that worked well for me. Your style is quite laid back, which probably took me a little while to get used to, but that not a bad thing. It took me a little while to kind of, okay, this is Frank's style. This is okay. I'm kind of getting this now. And I think one thing is coaching is different to mentoring. And I think probably a lot of us, and I probably came into this with this a little bit tightly linked as well. We often see things that are called coaching, but it's actually mentoring, where mentoring is giving information to people, giving knowledge and experience to someone to try and help them. I think your approach is much more towards the coaching end of that spectrum, which is asking questions. What do you think? And it's really provoking the coachee to gain the insights rather than be given information. And I perhaps hadn't quite set myself up for that. Coming into the course. But because of the kind of the role that I've been moving into over the last few years, I kind of went, come on, wake up. This is a coaching, not a mentoring thing. Kind of like get your head in the right space, and then I could kind of step into that. So don't know whether, depending who you're working with, whether a bit of context for what coaching is. You may have seen things described as coaching. They may not necessarily have been coaching in what you're going to experience when we go through this course. You know, a little bit of a setup on that, a 30-second setup on what's coaching versus mentoring might help someone just kind of get there a bit quicker if they're not quite in that space.
I get you. Which, I mean, we had a whole session for setup, so it's easy to just sneak that in there.
Slip that context piece into that.
Well, that's interesting. And it just goes to show however many people you have is how many different perspectives you have in the room, right?
Sure.
So, okay, I think those are pretty much is there any other feedback? So if you think of someone else who's considering doing the course, what would you be saying to them if they're thinking, should I not? What would be your pitch then?
Do the pre-read, do the prep work before the session, and come to the session with any questions. So I think what I saw was the questions would often, you would kind of, you clearly had a kind of like a bit of a rough plan of what we're going to go through today, but sometimes the questions you would kind of go, oh, hang on a minute, and you dig into your bag and you kind of go, here's something that might be interesting here, and I kind of got the impression that, and you were really cool in the way that you did it, but I got the impression, we weren't going to cover that today, but Frank's been able to kind of like just reach across the desk and grab something that actually steps into the question.
And that's a big value of mine, that it's all well and good having a tight, whatever, but it's who's in the room and what serves them the most. And everybody always benefits from those as well, actually. So that's why I kind of happy to do that. So if you're talking to someone who's wondering whether they should go for it, in terms of the value that you think this can give people, what would you say to some people like that, for them to kind of take a chance on it?
So I mean, really, I would kind of say if you've got a busy life, you've got a busy work life, you've got a busy home life, you're going to take an hour. Were they 1 hour sessions, Frank? Remind me.
Yeah, they're 1 hour sessions, but yeah,
one hour every couple of weeks. What have you got to lose?
Yeah.
And you might have loads to gain.
Yeah.
Out of the investment of an hour.
Yeah.
Spend half an hour just to do the pre-read and stuff before you go into it. Do that a couple of days in advance. Come into it with some questions, and you've got nothing to lose, and you could find that there's something really useful. And if you get one thing out of that course that you can use in your day to day, then you've gained something that's, you know. We go on these training courses. I think we had 7 sessions, so that's 7 hours. That's a day's worth of training that we would go on, and we come back from it with one thing that we're going to take back into our day. We come back and we think that's good. We come back with 3 things and we think that's great. Out of a 7-hour investment. Well, that's what this course offers, is a 7-hour investment spread over a number of weeks. But there's potential gold in there if you're prepared to position yourself to find it.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much for that.